The bartender set a crumpled unpaid tab in front of her, and the room leaned in. Shame tightened Maya Hernandez's chest so sharply she pressed her fingers to the small silver locket at her throat. She did not want anyone to see the notice from her landlord open on her phone. She did not want to hear the low murmur of gossip near the pool table. The conflict was plain: pay now or accept humiliation. Maya moved her hand over the receipt and looked up. Maya was 32. She worked double shifts and folded night shift plates into a worn leather tote before walking a block to the quiet studio she shared with her son. She kept one steady rule for herself: never accept help that felt like charity. That rule sat across from her now, in the faded light of the bar, while a bartender named Carlos watched with an expression that mixed practicality and apology. Carlos pushed the receipt a little closer. "Carlos, Maya, we can run tabs like that." Maya's mouth shaped an answer and then closed. She rubbed her thumb against her knuckle, the motion she used to steady her voice. The bar's neon sign hummed outside the window. Alina, a woman at a corner table, tapped a cigarette ash and let her eyes slide toward Maya like a small, sharp blade. "Alina, you should have told people sooner." "People talk, Maya." Maya held the locket between thumb and forefinger so tightly it left a crescent of pale skin. The locket had a child's drawing folded inside, a blue crayon sun and a misspelled name. The sight of it made her breathe in short, clean pulls. Shame shifted under her ribcage into a quick, hot self-defense. She straightened her shoulders. "Maya, Carlos, I'll sort this tonight." Carlos looked at the receipt. "Carlos, we need the cash now." A nosy whisper rose from the pool table. Elena's voice carried, "Maybe she's been skipping rent." Maybe she. Someone at the bar laughed, not cruel but loud enough. Maya's fingers slid away from the locket and landed on her phone. A landlord notice sat on screen. Overdue 30 days. The digits read like a verdict. Her heart rate pulled tight. She could imagine Daigo's face when he found out. The idea of his yelling made her jaw clench. A quiet movement cut through the low noise. A man across the bar pushed a folded receipt toward Carlos. He was tall and wore a dark wool coat. His hands were steady. For the first time since the room tightened around her, Maya felt another pressure. Suspicion. Who paid her bill and why? Liam Archer kept his distance when he slid the receipt across. He did not draw attention. He folded his hands and looked at Maya the way someone studies a fragile object before deciding how to carry it. That small, deliberate motion altered the balance of the room. The whispering slowed, the hum focused. Carlos tapped the paid stamp and set the receipt down. "Carlos, that's on me." Maya's throat made a small sound. I can pay you back." Liam's pause was a measured instrument. He reached into his coat and produced a folded scrap of paper without fanfare. He slid it toward Maya. He did not look around. A tiny child's drawing peeked from the top, the same crude sun and a name Maya recognized in the slanted script. Maya's mouth went dry. Maya's doubt tightened and then thinned into a sharper worry. She folded herself in on the possibility that someone had seen the locket, the drawing. Her eyes flicked to Liam. She saw the crease at the corner of his mouth and the small crescent scar on the back of his left hand when he rested it on the counter. The scar made him seem like someone who had carried tools, not wealth. But the watch on his wrist was clean stainless steel and his coat smelled of cedar. "Liam, I noticed the locket when you moved to tie your hair back. I thought the child might be your anchor. I have an opening at a small place that needs a steady set of hands. If you want, I can introduce you." Maya bristled. The word anchor felt like a promise she had no right to accept. She looked at Carlos. "Carlos, Maya, you have to decide now." Elena snorted under her breath. Elena, sure, accept a stranger's job. That's safe. Maya felt the room tilt between two rules she kept for herself. Protect her child's privacy and never take a favor that asked nothing in return. The argument moved her from shame into suspicion. She folded her knuckles against the counter and used the contact inside the locket to steady herself. "What's the job?" she asked. Liam named a small company in Denver that repaired specialized equipment used by clinics. His words were specific. They need someone reliable at the front desk. 2 weeks cover, steady after that if you want it. It's not fancy pay, but it's steady. Maya's mind measured the concrete elements. A 2-week trial, daytime hours that could line up with school pickup, a pay rate that would cover rent the next month. Her lips shaped a question about why he would offer such a thing to someone he did not know. She did not speak it. Liam folded a white card from his wallet and set it beside the receipt. He did not push. No obligation, no oversight. If you call, tell them Liam sent you. Diego's entrance broke the fragile chamber of consideration. He pushed into the doorway 2 beers and anger. Diego had a breath that smelled of cheap tequila and worse choices. The face he wore when drunk was the one that had once won Maya's patience and now tested it. Diego barked, "Maya, what are you doing? Selling yourself to a stranger?" Maya looked up at him. Shame spiked into anger. She stood. "Maya, Diego, don't start." Diego stepped closer to the counter. "Diego, you think some rich man is going to fix this? You always fall for that act." Liam did not stand at once, but he rose in a single, controlled movement and placed himself between Diego and Maya. He did not touch Diego. He did one thing. He folded his hands and kept his voice low. "Liam, Diego, step back." Diego laughed and shoved his chin forward. "Diego, who are you to tell me to step back?" The argument gained speed like a small machine. "Diego, you think a stranger can buy her rent? She always needs somebody to save her." Maya's jaw tightened. "Maya, Diego, you don't know what you're talking about. Leave." Diego's hand bunched at his side. He reached toward Maya's bag. He moved like someone who expected to take what he wanted. The bar held its breath. Elena began to clap slowly, a thin, angry sound. Carlos crossed to the doorway to call security. The tension climbed into sharp fear. Liam's voice did not rise. He stepped forward and extended his hand with the white card toward Diego. "Liam, this is not your place to decide." "Diego, leave her things alone and leave." Diego looked at the card as if it were a mirror. "Diego, oh, yeah. And who are you?" Liam folded his hands. "Liam, enough." Diego lunged. Carlos grabbed him. The scuffle moved like a quick, rough tide. Diego pushed at Carlos, then swore and shoved toward the exit. Carlos and a patron named Raul hustled him out of the door. "Raul, take it outside." Outside, the door closed with a final clang. Maya breathed loudly. Her hands were shaking. She held the locket in one palm and the paid receipt in the other. The paid receipt felt small and anonymous. The child's drawing inside Liam's card felt personal. Her emotions shifted again, from fear into a ragged relief that moved into guarded curiosity. "Maya, Diego's not welcome here." Liam did not explain why he intervened beyond that one line. He looked at her instead of at the door. "Liam, are you all right?" Maya answered with a single sentence she had practiced for herself in quieter moments. "Maya, I am not broken. I will manage." Liam tilted his head. I didn't think you were broken. I only thought you could use certain help." Maya folded the white card and slipped it into her coat pocket. The gesture was precise and small. The card sat beside her fingers like a potential map. She did not accept the offer outright. She held the option in reserve. Carlos cleared a glass and then quieter. "Carlos, Maya, you can call him if you want. Or not." Elena leaned back at her table and lit another cigarette. "Elena, you'll see. He'll be gone tomorrow. People like him don't stick around." The room's opinion moved like an animal restless at the edge of hunger. Maya felt it press at the edges of her resolve. She slid the paid receipt into her wallet. She kept the landlord notice face down on her phone. Later, after she wiped her face in the bar's dim restroom and tightened the strap on her tote, Maya paused near the door. She held the locket against her chest and told herself a list of small, concrete facts. 2 weeks trial, daytime hours, steady pay. She repeated each fact like a set of steps. The facts steadied her more than the promise of anyone's goodwill. Halfway down the block, the thought returned like a question. Why had Liam known about the drawing? Why had he matched the child's son so exactly? She stopped in the street under a sodium lamp and opened her palm. The median light revealed him across the way, still at the bar's window, his profile a dark shape against warm interior light. He had not left. Maya felt a small shock of suspicion. She walked back. Her footsteps were careful and precise. She did not want to appear needy. She did not want to ask for proof. She wanted to know if an opportunity was real. When she reached the doorway again, Liam looked up. He folded his hands and pushed a small folded paper across the sticky wood of the counter toward her. If you want the job, come by the clinic at 9 on Monday. Ask for Rosa. Tell her Liam sent you. Maya read the address and the name. The name Rosa meant a specific human person who would decide whether to hire her. The prospect altered suspicion into a practical calculation. She turned the paper over and found a short note in simple handwriting. Bring the locket. The handwriting matched the slanted letters on the child's drawing. Her shoulders eased in a way that felt like breathing through a narrow passage. That eased into a cautious hope that had to be guarded. She inserted the card into her tote, clasped the locket shut, and said, "Thank you." Liam did not look gratified. He only said, "Do what you must." Maya on the street, a taxi screamed past and kicked up a thin spray from the curb. Maya's chest still carried the quick burn left by Daigo's shove. The night's air smelled of exhaust and the burnt sugar of the bar's closing special. She moved her hand to the locket again, feeling the rough metal under her thumb. The locket was a small, heavy fact. The chapter's mid-point brought explainable surprise. The folded drawing matched the one inside her locket. That tiny reveal changed things. It pushed the narrative into a mini cliffhanger because the reader and Maya had to decide what that match meant. Did Liam know someone who had seen her child? Was he surveilling customers? Or did he carry a connection to a past she had not yet understood? The question hung tight enough to make her fingers tremble. Maya considered walking away. She thought about teaching her son to be careful with strangers. She thought about the rent notice on her phone. She thought about small, measurable steps that could keep them safe for one more month. She opened her mouth to refuse and then closed it. She chose containment. "Maya, I'll come by Monday. 9. Rosa." Liam nodded. "I'll tell her to expect you." The next morning, Maya woke before the alarm, because worry had rewritten the rhythm of her sleep. She made pancakes and packed a sandwich. She checked the locket twice. She sent a text to a neighbor to ask if they could watch her son for 1 extra hour if work required it. Each concrete action pushed the shame into pragmatic planning. Her emotion shifted again, from private shame to focused resolve. On Monday, she stood at a tidy clinic lobby painted a pale, washed blue. The woman at the desk looked up. Maya showed the locket from inside her sweater and said, "Rosa." "Liam sent me." Rosa's eyes flicked to the locket. "Rosa, he's been useful. Sit, we'll ask you about availability." The conversation lasted 10 minutes. Rosa about experience. Maya spoke plainly and with small sentences. "Maya, I handled calls. I can file. I can be on time. My son is steady at school till 3. Rosa pushed a small schedule across the desk. "Rosa, we can do a 2-week cover. Cash paid weekly. Bring an ed. Start tomorrow." Maya left with a small paper schedule and the exact hours written in neat ink. The scale of the change was limited and specific. The job would not erase months of unpaid rent in a single check. It would, however, fix the next month's rent if she did not miss a day. That fact changed her posture. Back at the clinic, a nurse named Rawl praised the neatness of the filing system. "Rawl, if Maya keeps this up, she'll be an asset." The tiny endorsements from Rosa and Rawl built into a new reality. Maya's movements became more confident. Her voice when she said the name of her son at pickup sounded steadier. Her choices shifted from hiding to measured steps. On a Thursday afternoon, Elena returned to the bar and found herself watching Maya enter in a light coat, hair tucked behind her ear. A small tote that looked fuller than before. "Elena, Looks like someone found a hand. Maya did not answer Elena. She slipped past with a small nod to Carlos. Carlos, good shift. Maya. Diego's presence did not vanish entirely. He called twice and left messages with tones that made her stomach twist. Once he came by the apartment and banged on the door. Maya him through the peephole to go. He swore and left. Those events reminded her to keep a battery-powered lamp by the front door and to change the padlock on the gate. Those acts were not speeches of newfound strength. They were specific precautions. The chapter's climax returned to the bar that same week. Diego reappeared, more intoxicated, and this time he tried to shove his way into the back entrance where Maya stored her tote. He wanted to confront her in private. Carlos intercepted him. Diego shoved Carlos and tried to reach the doorway. Liam happened to be at the bar again and stepped in. What followed was a quick confrontation. 3 men, 1 woman, a spilled glass and a hard shout. Diego, you think you can take her and leave. Carlos, Diego, stop it. Liam, Diego, you need to walk away. Diego lunged. Carlos and Raul wrestled him out. Liam stayed close to Maya as the door banged shut. Maya's hands were trembling, and she gripped the strap of her tote until her knuckles went white. She felt fear like a held breath. Then something else moved through her. Anger at being treated as someone to be taken. She pulled back so her voice could be clear. Maya, Diego, do not come here again. Diego spat and left with a final, cruel word. The moment after he went was quieter in a dangerous way. Maya's body released tension. Her fear shifted into guarded relief. She packed her tote and looked at Liam. Liam handed her a small folded paper with his contact. If anything happens, call. Maya folded it into her palm and put it in her pocket. She did not ask why he had stepped in that night. She did not demand to know whether his intervention was merely courtesy or the sign of a larger connection. She made a decision based on immediate facts. She had a job, a contact, and a path to cover next month's rent. She would use those facts. The final paragraphs tie concretely to the events of the chapter. Maya walked out into the Denver night with the paid receipt in her wallet and Liam's card in her coat pocket. She tightened the strap on her tote, checked that the locket was closed, and stepped onto the curb. The bar door shut behind her with a soft, decisive click. She held the card and the receipt in one hand and the locket against her chest with the other. And then she crossed the street toward the bus stop to go home. Marcus pushed the paper against the windshield with the heel of his hand and did not look up. The sound of the stapler clipped in the alley broke the last of Maya Hernandez's composure. Shame rose hot in her throat before she could swallow it down. She pressed her fingers against the silver locket at her neck with the same motion she had used in the bar earlier when Tom slid a crumpled, unpaid tab toward her. You have till morning, Marcus. Bring proof or we tow and start proceedings. The demand left no room for argument. Shame drove her forward first. Then suspicion tightened under her ribs when a man stepped out of the shadow and began to cross the pavement. His coat collar turned up against the night. Maya kept one hand on her bag. She blocked the phone screen from Marcus' view with the other and held the eviction notice between them like a thin shield. Behind her the bar door side closed and Tom's face hovered in the doorway, concerned and tired. Maya, come on, Tom, you don't have to, Tom. Maya cut him off, naming him as if the sound of his name could stop the next motion. Not now. Her voice was low and careful. She did not want pity. She wanted a way forward that did not make her feel small. Marcus grunted, you should have paid last week. Rules are rules. He folded his arms and tapped the paper with a thumb for emphasis. I need something solid by 9 a.m. or I call the company. His rhythm was practiced. He expected resistance and had a script for every answer. Maya's mouth formed words that didn't leave. She had rehearsed explanations earlier in the afternoon in the bar bathroom mirror and at the sink in her apartment. None of those lines stopped the stapler. The stranger stopped a foot away. He kept his hands visible at his sides. He did not glare at Marcus. He did not offer a show of wealth. He reached into his coat and produced a small card with embossed letters and a name. Miss Archer, he said, showing it to Marcus without flourish. Marcus read the name, then the number, then squared his jaw. The presence of a new card shifted the angle of the evening from accusation to negotiation. Maya's suspicion tightened into questions she did not say aloud. Maya had felt the same tightness earlier that night when the bartender had set the crumpled unpaid tab in front of her. That small public paper had cut her. She had pulled her sweater tighter and pretended to search for cash. She had rehearsed a refusal then, the same refusal she tried now. Pride made her refuse help unless it kept her dignity intact. Shame had been the engine of that pride. Now that the stranger's fingers closed around a pen while Marcus dialed a number, the engine of shame fought with a younger, more practical voice. Pay or lose everything. Tom put a hand on Marcus' arm and moved him aside. Marcus, just wait a minute. He looked past Marcus to Maya and then to the stranger. Maya, do you know this man? Tom, no, Maya answered. Her voice stayed small. I don't. The stranger's face did not change. He folded his hands and waited. Marcus' call lasted 10 seconds that felt like a small eternity. He pressed the phone to his ear and barked a few words, then clicked the phone off and frowned. The company won't accept a promise over the phone. They need cash or cleared payment. He glanced at Maya. Bring it by 9 or we start paperwork in the morning. He stuffed the notice back into his pocket and turned to leave, but stopped when the stranger stepped closer and placed a folded bill on the hood of Marcus' car. It was precise, not showy, and Marcus's face shifted from suspicion to calculation. Mr. Marcus, the stranger said, slow and neutral, this takes care of today. I will speak with you about the longer arrangement in private. Marcus' jaw moved. He counted the bills in his head. Marcus accepted the cash because he could, and because it cost him nothing to accept help that felt immediate. Maya's shame tightened again, then loosened only enough to let her breathe. She kept her hand on the locket and blocked the sight of the money with her palm, as if that might make it less humiliating. When Marcus walked away, Tom folded his hands and gave Maya a look that asked 1,000 small things. Are you okay? Can I do anything? Maya steadied her voice. Tom, tell Elena thank you for the couch idea, she said. Tell her I'll take it if I need to. Tom nodded and went back inside the bar. Maya's chest felt raw. She expected the stranger to wait, to offer a show of sympathy or questions. He did neither. He slid down onto the curb with careful precision as if he belonged there, and opened the leather cover of a slim notebook. The stranger's eyes rested briefly on a child's. Drawing tucked the corner of Maya's wallet, where a small piece of paper showed a scribbled sun and a child's handwriting. He pointed at the drawing with the tip of his finger. Is that your child? He asked. His voice was low. Maya jerked at the question with a small, involuntary motion. Suspicion altered into guarded curiosity. Yes, she said. Yes, that's Sophia S. She wanted to protect the drawing the way she protected Sophia. The stranger's attention to that small paper shifted the weight of the night. He knew something private, not just the number of bills in her hand. I can help more than tonight, he said. There are programs with emergency funds and a shelter network. I can call them in the morning. But the first step is that you need a pause on the eviction. He folded the notebook closed. I can give you that pause now. Maya looked at the silver locket at her throat, then at the stranger's plain silver ring, then at the drawing. She tasted all the words she would say and pushed them down to keep the barrier she had built intact. Why? She asked, why do you care? The man collected his hands. Because I do things when I see someone holding on. Not for show. For result. His name after a pause. Liam Archer. He did not smirk. He did not explain himself further. He offered a business card and a small, practical solution. A receipt stamped with payment, a call to a local housing liaison, and a suggestion for a modest shelter program that kept family units together. He did not promise riches. He promised practical next steps. Maya's suspicion deepened. She cradled it like a fragile object. People don't do this for nothing, she said. Liam, why would you? She cut off when Marcus' footsteps returned quickly, and Marcus. Who's this man? Marcus' voice carried a note of accusation. He had seen money change hands, and he wanted to know who had shifted the leverage. Marcus walked back with a swagger. This isn't a charity street, he added. If you rewriting cheeks, make sure they revalid. He looked at Liam and then at Maya as if trying to measure leverage. Liam explained calmly, Marcus, the payment is confirmed, and I will follow up with proof in the morning. He did not argue. He handed the receipt to Marcus. Marcus inspected it and scowled, but the scowl had less certainty than before. He kept the paperwork because it would make his job easier, and because refusing the payment would mean extra work he didn't want. Marcus spat a small warning about rules and left with a last muttered, "Keep the place tidy." He walked away. When he turned the corner, the alley felt like it had lost some of its immediate threat. Inside the bar, Tom touched Maya's shoulder with the back of his fingers and spoke softly. "Maya, you okay?" Tom's voice was practical. He had already put a jug of coffee on the bar and been through the motions of offering help. "Tom," Maya answered yes. For now, she counted her breaths. The first emotion of the night, shame, had shifted to suspicion and now to wary relief. This sequence of shifts happened in the span of minutes, and each change altered what she would allow herself to consider next. Liam spoke to Maya directly for the first time alone. "You don't have to tell me why you refused Tom's tab earlier," he said. "I saw you in the bar." I saw the tab he did not press. His tone asked for permission to move forward. Maya kept her voice steady. "I wasn't asking for charity," she said. "I was paying what I could." The line between pride and need showed in the small lift of her chin. "I have to protect Sophia's things. I can blow through one gift and then have nothing tomorrow. She Sophia's name as if it were a talisman. I understand, Liam. I can help with the short-term payment and a referral to programs that keep families together. I prefer to do it quietly, so there isn't a paper trail that embarrasses anyone." He paused, measuring his words. "But I will need you to meet with a caseworker tomorrow. The program requires a conversation. If you agree, I'll arrange it." Maya felt a new emotion rise, one she had not wanted to name. Wary gratitude. It came with an ache behind her ribs. She tightened her fingers around the strap of her bag until the leather creaked. Why the caseworker? "Maya, why not give me the money and be done?" She felt defensive. She wanted a simple transaction, not extra obligations, because I don't want to create dependency, Liam. Because I want to connect you to resources that keep you with your child and off the street. Because paying tonight only delays the problem if nothing else changes, he spoke plainly. Maya noticed how direct he was. His voice did not carry charity, it carried parameters. His manner moved her from suspicion toward assessment. An older woman came out of the building next door and crossed the alley with a small box of dishes. Elena carried the box into the doorway and set it down with deliberate care. She had a neighbor's concern on her face. "Maya, Elena, if you need a bag drop, I can keep some things in my hall for the night." Elena's presence forced Maya to name options beyond pride. Elena had been the neighbor who offered a place to stow a few things, who had once borrowed sugar and returned it with fresh bread. She had practical hands and an unromantic way of offering help. "Elena, thank you, Maya." Her voice still kept a distance. Elena nodded and tightened her cardigan. Tom moved between the figures and brought 2 paper cups of coffee to Liam and Maya. The steam cut the sharp edge of the night air. "Liam, Tom," naming him as if he owed a social courtesy. "Thanks for handling Marcus." Tom's voice held a rough gratitude. Liam inclined his head, his hands wrapped around the cup like a steady anchor. Maya sipped and felt the heat move down her chest. The coffee tasted like bitter solidity. "Maya, one question that held the night together. What do you want from me in return?" She said, "I won't sign anything without reading it." Her sentence was short and direct. It demanded a specific answer. Liam paused, considered the question, and answered with the kind of clarity that made people either trust or bristle. "I don't want control," he said. "I want you to meet a caseworker and to accept a 3-week support plan. After that, the program reviews your files and helps you find stable options. If you refuse, I'll step back. If you accept, I'll make the call in the morning and the payments will be documented. No strings beyond participation." The terms were practical. Maya's mind ran through practical logistics, how she would arrange childcare, how she would get Sophia ready the next morning, how she would face the landlord if the paperwork kept stretching. The night's second external event came when a beat-up compact car pulled into the alley and turned its lights on. A neighbor she had seen earlier slid down the passenger window and shouted, "You need a hand." "I can grab boxes." The arrival forced Maya to make a decision to accept help in small increments. Maya took a breath and agreed to one condition. She would not let anyone handle Sophia without her say. "So, nothing without my say," she told Liam. "If you or anyone moves stuff, I need to know where it goes." The firmness in her words pushed back on the night. Liam acknowledged the demand. "I would expect that," he said. "We'll work with your schedule." Alina offered to watch Sophia for an hour tomorrow morning if needed. Blunt and efficient, drop her by 9. "I have cereal and cartoons, Elena." Her voice was practical, bracing. The night continued to bend. Marcus' earlier threat had been neutralized for the moment, but the broader problem remained. Rent owed and court dates looming. Liam handed Maya a paper with a caseworker's name and a street address for the program. He wrote the appointment time in his own neat hand. "Be there at 10, he said. "Bring any paperwork you have. Bring Sophia's birth certificate if you can." He folded the paper and placed it in her hand with the same care he had shown the money. Maya studied the handwriting, the slant of the pen. It felt like a map with a single clear direction. Then the conversation tightened into a small confrontation when Marcus walked by the bar door again, muttered something about paperwork, and said to Maya, "If you think one night covers it, you think wrong." Marcus' voice aimed to provoke. Tom answered back for her before she could. "Marcus, you heard the arrangement." Walk away. The exchange turned into a short, rapid back and forth where names were repeated and positions clarified. Marcus, Tom, Maya, Liam. "This is settled for now." The short confrontation lasted less than a minute, but left everyone keyed. After Marcus left, Maya felt the last change of emotion for the evening. Wary relief shifted toward cautious planning. She practical questions about the program intake form, about what documents mattered, about whether she could bring Sophia along. Liam answered each in simple terms: "Bring what you can. We'll make phone calls in the morning. If anything else is needed, call the number on this card." He did not promise miracles. He promised steps. Maya did not sleep well that night. She folded Sophia's drawing into a small paper boat and put it on the windowsill like a signal. She forced herself to list 3 concrete tasks for the next morning. Pack a small bag, ask Alina about a place to leave items if needed, and be at the intake center by 10. She also rehearsed what she would say to the caseworker. Her rehearsed lines were short and specific. "My name is Maya Hernandez. I rent an apartment at 32 Elm. I have been behind on rent due to reduced hours at work. I have a 5-year-old daughter named Sophia. I need help to avoid eviction and to keep our apartment." The sentences felt practical and durable. Before she slept, she looked at the paper boat and touched the childlike sun drawn on its sail. She did not let herself think about large outcomes. She stayed in the small tasks. The night had started with shame and a public notice. It had moved through suspicion and a brusque negotiation, then to guarded curiosity and a practical offer. Each shift was measured in actions. A stapled notice, a hand-sliding cash, a card pushed across a hood, a neighbor bringing dishes, a caseworker's name written in ink. Maya turned off the lamp and let the room settle. She did not say a prayer. She listed the tasks again and checked the pocket of her coat for the folded paper with Liam's information. The room smelled of coffee and the faint lavender from her coat. She set the small paper boat on the windowsill and left the window cracked a fraction. The sound of a distant garbage truck rolled by. The night had not solved everything. It had only made space for a sequence of small choices. She would meet a caseworker. She would keep one protective rule. Nothing would move without her say. When the first thin light of morning touched the paper boat, Maya touched its edge with her fingertip and felt a cautious, practical hope. She reached down and tucked the folded note with the appointment into her wallet beside the child's drawing. The last beat of the chapter is the paper boat on the windowsill as she turns the deadbolt and walks out to meet the next concrete thing the morning brings. The paper was damp when Maya pulled it off the fridge. She read the time written in a child's hand and found a small tear where the magnet had held it down. Suspicion rose in her chest and did not loosen. The paid bar receipt lay beside it, stamped with a time she had been at work and a card number she did not recognize. She pressed the receipt flat against the kitchen counter with one fingertip and started the kettle without thinking. Sophia's drawing fell from the magnet when Maya reached for the receipt. The pencil lines showed a playground slide and a sun drawn too big, and someone had written a single address on the back. Maya's throat tightened. Suspicion pushed her to check the locks again. She moved through the flat, touching each doorknob, looking for pry marks. She found none. She set the kettle down with a clack and read the receipt aloud to herself, paid at 9:02 p.m. Card ending in 240, she said. I was at work. Who used this card? The question was concrete. It forced her hands into action. She dug her phone from the leather tote, thumbed to the messages where she kept the landlord's number, and then stopped. A name on the receipt matched a name she'd seen once before in the bar's back room. Liam Archer. She had seen the name on a slipped card, half hidden, and had forgotten it until now. Her fingers found the silver locket at her throat without thought. The locket's chain felt cool. She opened it and checked Sophia's photo as if that small oval could answer the sudden list of how and why. The kettle clicked and moved to a low hum. Maya's suspicion changed into a tight decision. She would go back to the bar before morning and demand answers. She put Sophia's drawing into her coat pocket and left the apartment with the kettle still warm on the stove. At the bar, Marcus was sweeping the last glass fragments into a dustpan. He looked up when Maya pushed through the door, the bar's neon sign throwing a thin red across his face. Marcus set the broom down with an exaggerated calm that did not hide surprise. Marcus, Maya, the receipt. Who paid it? Marcus flipped open a worn ledger and pushed it toward her. You mean this one? I ran it through last night when we closed. The slip matches a card authorization. He slid a folded copy of the receipt across the counter and tapped the printed name, Liam Archer. Maya's voice came fast. Liam who? Marcus looked at her and then at the floor. Liam Archer. He left the room after paying. He not to give you a fuss. He me to make sure you didn't see anyone handing you money. Questions came out of Maya in short bursts. Why would he do that? Did he say why? Did he leave a note? Who is he? Marcus shook his head. It was private. He only asked me to fold the receipt and slip it in the till if you asked. He left his card on the counter. He tapped the bar where a business card usually lay when someone paid large tabs. I ran it through because it was the right thing to do. Marcus' tired face told a second story. The bar ran on favors, and favors had rules. Maya pushed the receipt into her palm and felt the heat of unknown hands. Suspicion shifted into anger, sharp, vocal, practical. Marcus, did you keep his card? I want to see it. Marcus hesitated, then pulled a slim plastic sleeve from under the register. I kept it, but the name S printed. It's him. She read the card under the bar light. Liam Archer. The name matched the printed slip. Marcus watched her closely as if he might step in to explain more and change nothing at all. Which Liam Archer? Maya, because the name could belong to any man with the right coat and the right watch. Liam Archer. Same one who comes in sometimes after the meeting at the office building down on 5th. He sits in the corner, orders black coffee, reads something on his phone. Quiet type. Marcus folded his hands. He mean not to say anything unless you asked. Though, Maya left the bar with the copy of the receipt clutched in her hand. Outside, the cold made the paper crack at the folds. The night smelled of recent rain on pavement. A new emotion slid under the anger. Fear that someone had crossed from charity into surveillance. That fear made her decide to go home and check the door frames, the windows, the back stairs. She moved faster than she meant to, fingers taut inside her coat pockets around the child's drawing. At 6 the next morning, Mayor Perez arrived at the building office with a stack of corrected papers. He set them on the counter like bricks. Ms. Hernandez, he said, sliding one across to her without preface. This payment was reversed. Your lease is in arrears again. You have until Friday to produce $1,500 or you vacate. Maya read the corrected notice and felt the floor narrow under her. She pushed back with facts, but there's a receipt stamped last night. I have the paid slip. Mr. Perez's face did not change. That was preliminary. The bank returned the authorization. Whoever paid did not have authority, apparently. The balance is current again at $1,500. Maya's mind worked in sharp, economical thoughts. If the payment had been reversed, then either the payer had been authorized and had their payment refused, or someone had colluded to make the debt stick. Her suspicion flared into something else now. Distrust of the paperwork itself. Show me the return notice, she demanded. Perez slid a paper toward her and tapped a stamp here. The bank denied the transaction. She read the stamped line, then the routing numbers. The numbers traced a path that meant nothing to her until she noticed a small annotation in Mr. Perez's handwriting. Recheck authorizer. The line made her think of the photograph Marcus had taken out of habit months ago. A man in a wool coat leaving the bar and a landlord looking the other way. Her suspicion tightened into resolve. She would not let the lease evaporate, because paperwork could be re-typed. Sophia's schoolbag smelled of crayons when Maya picked her up at midday. Sophia ran into her arms with a paper clip stuck to one corner of her jacket and held up the folded scrap with wide, serious eyes. Look, Mama, Sophia. He left it by the swings. He drew the map. He wrote the time. Maya took the scrap and flattened it on the bench. The map was small, corners chewed by a pen, a line showing the playground, a time scrawled next to it. The handwriting matched the address on the fridge. Maya's chest tightened. Fear moved into the foreground now. Protective, hot. She checked Sophia's hair for tug marks, checked her hands for dirt. The child's calm made the fear worse. Who is he? Maya, keep my voice level. Sophia, who left this? Sophia pointed to a man playing with a paper airplane at the edge of the preschool lot. He had a coat, Mama. He watched. He smiled. Then he left the paper. Maya's eyes met the man's across the playground. He was gone. The man had been close enough for Sophia to notice. An immediate shift occurred inside Maya. Distrust of the neighborhood, hardening of routines. She hugged Sophia, felt the child's heartbeat quicken against her chest, and made a plan aloud. Stay with Miss Anita after school today, Sophia. Do you understand? She said, okay, Mama, Sophia. Her voice was bright and obedient, but the folded scrap burned in Maya's coat pocket like a new thing that would not cool. 3 hours later, Maya found Liam at the corner cafe, because his patterns were small and repeated, and a woman with suspicion and a receipt could follow a pattern. He sat at a window table with his back straight and a plain silver ring catching the light on his right hand. When she slid onto the chair across from him, the barista cleared his throat and left. Liam Archer. Maya. He looked up slowly. Ms. Hernandez. You came. Why did you enter my apartment? She asked without primble. Why did you pay my tab? He folded his hands and gave the small, steady smile Marcus had mentioned. I didn't enter your apartment. I paid your tab because you looked like you needed a hand that night. I left the receipt because I done tea like surprises. Maya's voice cut short. You watched my daughter at the park. You left notes at my home. You crossed a line. Liam's jaw tightened. I followed you because you were in danger. I didn't want to be obvious. I left you information I thought would be practical. She reached for the photograph on the table as if it would explain all. Liam slid a small wallet across the wood and opened it. A photograph fell onto the table showing him sitting across from her at the bar, a date stamped in the corner from weeks prior. Maya frowned. You were there weeks ago, she said. You watched us then. Why? Liam's voice lowered. Because I noticed you. I noticed how you moved through your day. I thought I could help without making it humiliating. Maya pushed back. Anger returned, now mixed with a new thread. Confusion. Help how? By deciding you can watch my child. By deciding my locket and my choices are yours to guard. Liam's fingers closed around the rim of his coffee. You mean not to make a fuss? Marcus did. I paid the bar because the tab would have been public tomorrow, and because I wanted you to have time to act without feeling exposed. The question that had been growing tight inside her all morning. Then why is my landlord saying the payment was reversed? Liam hesitated. His measured pause came across as a mannerism. He had practiced silence in the spaces between words. I authorized the charge. If it was reversed, someone at the bank or your landlord's office flagged it. I will check the transaction. Maya's fear shifted to disbelief and then to a narrower, furious caution. She had to decide whether to trust a man who called his help quiet and who spoke with a low, calm voice. She decided instead to demand proof. Show me your card, Liam. Show me your bank confirmation. He slid a folded card across the table. The name matched the receipts. He met her eyes. I will get you the confirmation. I'll also tell you one thing. I have followed your schedule for months. I know the streets you take. I know where Sophia likes to swing. I only intervened when I thought you could not undo the pressure on your own. His words were careful, but carried an implication that unsettled her further. Maya rose then because she needed air. The cafe bell rang as she left. Liam watched her go with a tight, controlled expression. Outside, she found a quiet place to stand and pressed the receipt into the palm of her hand, feeling the crease where someone else's fingers had flattened it before. Her suspicion turned into a prickling certainty that she was being watched intentionally, but her next move needed to be practical. She would not beg for help, and she would not accept a protector who assumed control. She called Marcus and asked for temporary assistance. He could help with a couch for Sophia at his cousin's apartment on the other side of town for a few nights. And a woman who worked nights at the shelter could cover the first overnight. Marcus's name kept returning in every plan. His choices began to change the story as much as her own. The confrontation moved then into the dusk parking lot outside the cafe. Liam was waiting by his car, a low sedan that took up 2 spaces and smelled faintly of cedar. He opened the passenger door as she approached and held out a small plain silver ring in the palm of his hand. Maya, he said, I can't be a shadow outside your life anymore. I can offer you a place to go, a set of arrangements, new lease, relocation, school, placement for Sophia, no publicity. My terms are simple, relocation and my oversight until you settle. Take the ring as a symbol of that offer, not as anything else. Her hands curled. Liam, that's impossible. You can decide my life in a parking lot and hand me a ring. Who do you think you are? He smiled faintly, a man who prefers to solve problems with concrete measures. A man who believes in paying debts up front. The exchange turned bitter and sharp. Dialogue came fast as 2 people tried to set the boundaries between them. You followed us. Maya, it was protection. Now you want us to trade freedom for safety. I am offering stability, Liam, if you accept. I will cover the first 2 months of rent at a place I have scouted. I will arrange school transfer and your exit clause. Maya, what do you ask in return? Liam's eyes didn't waver. Agreement to accept my supervision until you say otherwise. Supervision. Maya's voice rose. You want to supervise my life? No. I want to ensure you and your daughter are safe while you rebuild, he said. The conversation became a string of short, brutal lines. Each line was a claim. Each line forced Maya to answer with a choice. Marcus, Sofer, and Mer. Perez's notices felt like pressure from different directions. Liam's ring felt like a hand on the scale. Her face went still with a new resolve. She could not allow another person to trade her dignity for safety in a way that erased her consent. She pushed the ring back across to him. No. I won sign myself away today. Her fingers left a small smear of sweat on the metal. If you want to help, you show me the bank confirmation. You show me that you hold no claim on me beyond the money you offered. Until then, I decide. Liam's jaw tightened. He folded his hands like he always did, and the motion calmed him. I'll get the confirmation. I'll come back with documents, Maya. But know this. I want to be indifferent to risk. If someone follows your child, I will act. She left him standing with the ring in his palm. Fear receded into a cold, practical plan. She returned home with Sophia at her side and found a small paper boat on the windowsill when she pushed the door open. The boat was folded from receipt paper, the same texture as the paid slip, and inside its hole someone had written only one thing. An address. Maya sat down on the couch and put her forehead against Sophia's hair. The boat's address was familiar in a way that made her stomach drop. It matched the name on the drawing and the note from the playground. Maya started to fold the paper boat open, but she stopped because action had to be precise now. She called Mr. Perez and asked for a meeting at his office. She called Marcus and arranged a place for Sophia for the next few nights. She called a woman at the shelter who had taken in a friend before. Each call was short, efficient, and built into a plan that relied on other people making concrete choices for her. The fear turned into collective action. She sat at the small kitchen table and wrote the address on the back of the paid receipt in block letters. Then she put the child's drawing in an envelope and wrote "Do not open" on it. Not because she expected anyone to obey the instruction, but because it made the action feel controlled. Marcus arrived at dusk with 2 duffel bags and a list. "We'll move her Wednesday," he said. "My cousin's place is small but safe." Maya handed him cash for the first week's deposit and a copy of her identification. She watched him walk out with the bags and felt a new, hard calm settle into her. The paper boat on the sill looked harmless now, but it had already altered the map of her life. It had forced her to accept help on her terms and to plan moves before anyone could force them on her. That night she placed the paid receipt and the boat's folded hull into the locket beside Sophia's photograph. The objects were small and concrete. They represented choices made, not quiet metaphors. She set an alarm and wrote a list of what to take if they had to leave in an hour. She checked the locks twice. She arranged for Marcus to call her at midnight with a check-in. Before she locked the door, she knelt on the floor and put the folded scrap of the child's drawing into her pocket. The scrap felt like a compass needle. It pointed not to safety, but to what had to be done next. She would not accept charity that erased her dignity. She would not accept a protector who demanded her freedom in exchange for shelter. But she also would not leave Sophia exposed to a man who left maps at playgrounds. The night ended with a plan. Temporary housing at Marcus' cousin's, school arrangements, and a bank inquiry Liam had promised to provide. Her suspicion had driven the chapter's opening. Fear had risen when Sophia found the note. And resolve had closed the chapter as she placed objects into the locket and arranged the moving day. A new cliff had appeared, the unanswered bank reversal, and she would follow that thread in the morning. Maya switched off the kitchen light and walked to the bedroom, where Sophia was already tucked in. She kissed the child's forehead, smoothed down her hair, and left the room quietly. The paper boat waited on the windowsill like an address she had not chosen. She left the receipt on the table, where Marcus could see it, and locked the door behind her, the click a small, decisive sound. She carried the folded scrap in her pocket and the locket at her throat as she stepped out into the cool night to meet the choices she had made. She yanked the windshield wiper up and froze when an envelope slid free. Inside was a stamp-paid bar receipt and a plain silver ring lying on tissue paper. Suspicion knotted Maya's shoulders before she could think. She touched the silver locket at her throat with 2 fingers and felt the metal edge against skin. The paid receipt bore a time from the night she'd closed the bar shift, a card number she did not recognize, and a cashier initial she did not know. The immediate question hit her in the gut: who had paid her tab, and why leave a ring like a promise or a demand? Maya shoved her purse strap higher across her shoulder and stepped back from the municipal garage, blinking at the fluorescent tubes that hummed overhead. She kept one hand near the tote where Sophia's folded sweater lay. The cold concrete underfoot, the small printed eviction notice she had shoved into her phone earlier that week, the landlord's terse voice in the memory. These were the facts that had been pushing at her all month. She could not let the child wake to an empty apartment again. That pressure moved her, not any story about fate. Survival shaped her next steps. She slid the receipt back into the envelope and walked to the stairwell, breathing shallow, counting the steps by sound. Suspicion gave way to guarded curiosity when Liam stepped out of the shadow between flights, his coat collar turned up against the night. He did not look surprised to find her. He held his hands folded, the plain silver ring visible on his right hand. "Maya," he said, voice low, "I left it there so you would find it without an audience." His measured pause made her tighten her grip on the tote. Maya's first response was a flat, angry edge. "Why would you touch anything that belongs to me?" she asked. The name of the landlord Marcus flashing behind her eyes, his stapled eviction notice, the way he pushed paperwork across the table earlier this week. Her jaw clenched. She rubbed her thumb against her knuckle, the small anxious habit she always hid. Her tone rose without meaning to, "Who are you to decide my bills?" Liam folded his hands a little more and lifted his chin like a man setting out facts. Not pleading. "I paid what I could at the bar," he said. "You didn't ask me. I only wanted to remove one immediate problem tonight. You can refuse anything else." He did not smile the way he would if this were a social meeting. His face stayed deliberate and quiet. That deliberate calm pushed at Maya's suspicion and pushed back on her pride. They spoke in short sentences. Maya named the exact stakes: the apartment, the rent due in 3 days, Sophia's school bag by the door, the reminder text from the landlord. Liam answered with concrete offers rather than promises. A night's lodging at a nearby guest room, funds to cover next week's utility bills, a phone number he would use to confirm arrangements with the shelter. When Maya why he cared, why he had slipped a child's drawing into his leather notebook, and why the drawing matched the photograph inside her locket, Liam's voice tightened for the first time. "I knew a classroom that kept drawings on a corkboard. Liam, I saw a particular drawing months ago. The teacher told me about a child who made it. I asked a favor from someone who runs the after-school program. I did not follow you. I did not wait outside your house. I left help in places where it would be quiet." His explanation landed as a set of small facts, not as confession. Maya's suspicion shifted into something sharper, anger toward the person with the power to remove her choice, and an odd prick of fear at how well he knew details of her life. They moved together down to the shelter intake as the late night clock thinned toward morning. Elena at the intake desk was awake when they arrived. She had a stack of files and an expression that suggested long hours and a direct lack of patience for polite fiction. She checked records on a tablet while Liam set the envelope and the receipt on the counter. "There's nothing formal here yet, Elena," tapping a name. "We don't take private promises without paperwork." Her tone was professional, sharp, and practical, exactly the type that required proof. Liam produced a letterhead, looking document and a neatly written note of terms. He folded it out on the counter like a man lining up puzzle pieces. Marcus' name, the landlord, arrived soon after as a different disturbance, a firm knock on the shelter door, and a voice calling Maya by name. Marcus held the formal eviction notice in his hand and set it on the intake desk with a thud. "You have until midnight tomorrow to sign a conditional release, or I secure the unit for non-payment," he said. His words were short. His presence was an external tick that transformed the theoretical risk into immediate peril. Maya stared at the eviction paper, then at Alina, then at Liam. Emotion shifted again, guarded anger softened into a cold, urgent clarity. She thought of Sophia's face at bedtime, the way she had traced letters on a crumpled sheet that afternoon. She pulled her phone out and thumbed at the screen until it chimed. A trembling call from Sophia, the child's voice bright and small. "Mommy, are you coming home soon?" Maya's voice cracked when she answered, and she kept it brief. "Yes, my amor. I am sorting things. I'll be home tonight, okay?" "Sophia, okay." The call tightened the immediate stakes into something physical. The sound of a child's breath, the rustle of a sheet. It changed hesitation into decision. Alina would not accept an oral promise. She paced a little and spoke in firm sentences to Liam. "I's not missing anything. If you want us to hold a room, we need the agency paperwork filed, a contact number, and proof you will fund it for at least 2 weeks," she said. "We cannot accept a private arrangement unless it's documented so we can defend it to the board." Alina's voice turned the gesture into administrative terms that shifted power into the open. Marcus glanced between them and muttered about legalities. The conversation sharpened into negotiation. When Liam set his leather-bound notebook on the counter, a child's crayon drawing slipped from between the pages and fluttered down. It hit the intake table near Maya's hand, and she recognized the way the sun was drawn, a crooked orange circle, and the small block letters that spelled Sophia at the corner. She reached and picked up the paper. Her fingers skimmed the crayon wax. The image matched the photo inside her silver locket. The same crooked sun, the same uneven handwriting. For a moment the air in the lobby felt small and loud. Maya's suspicion spiked into alarm. The fact that a private object showed such a specific detail felt invasive. "How did this get in your notebook?" Maya, voice low and hard. She named him directly. Liam met her gaze without evasions. "You mean not to make a scene," he said. "I kept it folded. I didn't want you to feel exposed. I thought the drawing would be a proof that connecting you to shelter help would be safe." The explanation felt like a small, dirty truth. His hands folded in front of him. Alina clicked the tablet shut and leaned forward. "You don't get to decide what safe is for someone else, Alina." The line of her speech was brisk. "Maya has to agree. We take her terms, not strangers' clauses." Marcus, who had been balancing the eviction notice and the position of authority, put the paper back into his jacket and stepped forward in a way that signaled impatience. "Ms. Hernandez, deadlines are deadlines. I can do a minimum extension if something is signed tonight. Otherwise, the lock is on tomorrow morning." His hands were blunt, and the sound of his shoes on concrete matched the extra pressure he brought. Maya felt the conversation compress around her. Alina's rules, Marcus's notice, Liam's silent insistence. She heard herself say, "I won't sign anything that gives someone else power over Sophia. Not in a contract, not in a clause, nothing that removes my authority." Her voice had a steady edge to it that surprised even herself. That steady refusal was action. It changed the tenor of the negotiation. Liam did not argue like a man demanding repayment. Instead, he slid a simple agreement across the desk. 3 clauses, explicitly limited: temporary housing for 2 weeks, he read aloud, funds for rent arrears up to a specified sum, and no guardianship or parental right transfer. No interference in school or medical decisions without written consent from Ms. Hernandez. He set the plain silver ring beside the paper. His eyes stayed on Maya. "Sign these terms or I walk away," he said. The phrase had no flourish. The ring on the paper looked like an offer and like a test at once. Marcus barked a laugh that was almost a sound of disbelief. Who writes a contract like that and leaves a ring on the form? His tone tried to reclaim authority through ridicule. Maya felt anger flare toward the landlord for making this a public contest. She felt anger toward the situation that forced her to choose quickly. Her emotion shifted from guarded clarity to frustrated determination. What do you want from me, Liam? Why this ring? Her question was practical, not symbolic. She wanted a specific reason. Liam's answer came in a pair of facts. The ring is a token I used with other arrangements. No ceremony, no claim, he said. If you sign, I assist. I will not ask you to leave choices to me. I asked Alina to introduce an arrangement that preserves your authority. That is it. He paused, measured. There was a faint tremor around his mouth that made Maya see the creases near his eyes. He knew. I was once in a different position, he admitted, briefly, the sentence bare. I chose to help quietly afterward. I don't want anything beyond what we both agree to now. Alina read the clauses aloud and suggested a minor edit, an explicit 2-week cap on any funds, with an option for extension only upon joint consent. Marcus objected that 2 weeks might not be enough for a legal eviction challenge, but Alina countered with administrative efficiency. Shelter space is limited. Long commitments without documents were rarely sustainable. The back and forth between Alina and Marcus became a concrete negotiation that forced the abstract worry into legal language. Maya listened, measuring each phrase against the protection it gave her child. Maya's next move was tactical. She for one change. Any funds paid on her behalf must be routed through the shelter account with receipts issued to her name and accessible to her on demand. I will not sign away my right to see where money goes, she said. Her voice was firm. Marcus shifted in his boots. Alina tapped the tablet. Liam nodded once. He accepted the condition without argument and initialed the margin. That small victory redirected fear into bargaining energy. Maya read through the final lines and could feel the future refocus into something she could handle. She signed with a hand that did not tremble as much as she feared. After she wrote her name, Liam pushed the paper back toward her and placed the plain silver ring in her palm. The ring was cool. It fit loosely on her finger. Maya felt an unexpected surge of protective caution, another emotion shift from clarity to wary trust. Then Alina did something Maya had not expected. She put her hand on the paper and looked at Marcus. We'll open an intake room in the next block, Alina. Marcus. If you hold off the lock until we've documented a plan, we can prevent a legal escalation tonight. Marcus rubbed his jaw. He had the eviction notice folded in his inner pocket. He consulted his watch and then the formalities that kept landlords from losing access to their own property. After a beat, he said, Fine, 48 hours. I will hold off on immediate lockouts so long as the terms are met and receipts presented. His concession felt like an external event that loosened the immediate danger. When Marcus left, the hallway felt narrower, quieter. The shelter clerk at the desk arranged a keycard and wrote a reference number on a small yellow slip for Maya. You don't have to go far tonight, Alina. You can bring Sophia here tomorrow at 9, and we'll set up intake for schooling and medical checks if needed. The words were simple logistics. They carried weight because they turned an emergency into steps. Maya hugged the plain yellow slip to her chest a moment before she folded it into her tote. She glanced at Liam, who stood with his hands folded, not smiling, not asking for thanks. Why? She asked again, softer this time, why did you choose this method? He gave another short sentence of plain truth, because someone once helped me the same way. Liam, I promised myself I would repay that debt quietly when I could. I didn't track you. I watched institutions and tried to find a practical path. The drawing, seeing it in my notebook, made it personal enough to act. The admission stripped the gesture down to a chain of facts that did not excuse boundaries breached, but explained motive. Maya looked at the ring in her palm. She slid it back across the table to him instead of putting it on. "Keep it until tomorrow," she said. "If I feel like this is right, I'll take it back. If not, I want it to mean nothing more than a receipt for help." Her sentence was practical, a condition expressed without flourish. Liam accepted the ring into his hand and nodded, small and deliberate, as they left the shelter front steps. Pre-dawn light was a thin strip along the skyline. Alina walked with them for a block and checked names against schedules for early intake. Marcus drove off. The city smelled faintly of wet asphalt and coffee being brewed in a 24-hour diner nearby. Sophia's stuffed rabbit peeped out of the tote as Maya arranged the bag across her shoulder. The tangible weight of the rabbit made the decision concrete. Before Maya left the shelter property, Alina handed her a printed list of local services and a contact at a school with an aftercare program. "You have to show up for the appointments. Alina, we can help negotiate extensions, but you have to be present." Her voice was direct, not soft. It had the tone of someone who had seen both rescue and ruin. That firmness offered Maya a practical framework instead of sentiment. They agreed on logistics. 2 weeks of housing funded through an account that would pay the shelter directly. Receipts sent to Maya. Medical and school intake appointments scheduled for the next morning. Marcus' extension gave them 48 hours, a narrow corridor but enough to move. That practical timetable shrunk the range of uncertainty into a sequence of named tasks. On the walk back to the car, Maya one last procedural question about Liam's notebook. Why keep anything with my child's name in a private book? She watched him fold his hands and saw the crescent scar on the back of his left hand when he raised them. "Bad habit," he said. "I meant to return it quietly. I didn't always get it right." The admission was brief, human, and not a justification. Maya accepted that but kept her watchfulness. They did not speak much on the drive as each processed the night's compressed decisions. Liam did not offer grand reassurances. He checked his phone once and then set it face down. Maya slid the silver locket under her shirt and closed her fingers around it. The locket felt like the smallest proof she owned. That night, when Maya unlocked the apartment door and Sophia scrambled into her arms, the exhausted relief was immediate and practical. A hot kettle, a small bowl of cereal waiting on the counter, the steady rhythm of a child breathing in sleep. Maya folded Sophia into the couch and sat with her hand on the child's back until the rise and fall slowed. The emotions that had driven the earlier negotiations, suspicion, fear, guarded anger, contracted into quiet vigilance, a steady focus on the practical. She set the yellow slip from Alina on the kitchen table and placed the paid receipt and the ring envelope beside it. Before she slept, she typed a precise list into her notes app. Confirm shelter booking at 9 a.m., pick up receipts at 3 p.m. Call the after-school coordinator by noon, ask Marcus for copies of payment records. The list read like actions rather than promises. That was how she framed the morning. Not hope, not trust, but tasks. At 8:57 a.m. the next day, Maya walked into the shelter intake wearing the same knit sweater, a pencil tucked behind her ear, Sophia's backpack on her shoulder. Alina greeted her by name and handed a paper packet. Marcus was there too, looking more formal with a business card and a slightly softened expression. "I kept my word. Marcus, 48 hours. You have until the end of the week if paperwork continues to move." His tone had no warmth, but it was a practical confirmation that the crisis had paused. The after-school coordinator met them and took Sophia's drawing and the locket photo into a file. She nodded at Mia and then at the drawing. "We can add her to the morning program starting Monday," the coordinator said. "We have lunch vouchers and we will check any school fees," another practical line of support. Maya's relief rose in a measured, concrete way. She could see the steps that would keep her child in school. At midday, Alina sat down across from Maya with a thermos of watered coffee and a printed ledger showing receipts deposited and the incoming funds. "Everything is in your name." Elena, Liam wired amounts to the shelter account. Receipts are under your file. There's an administrative fee we waived because he covered it. She tapped the ledger. If you need a formal grievance process, I will walk it with you. You are not alone in the paperwork now. You have options. The sentence offered structure more than sentiment. Maya met Liam in the small private office the shelter had arranged. He placed the leather notebook on the desk and pushed it toward her without theatrics. I will keep the ring as a placeholder until you tell me otherwise, he said. No strings. Only that I will check in with Alina to ensure the paperwork is honored. His eyes looked older than his words. If at any point you decide it's wrong, say so and I stop. The simplicity of the conditional felt like a chord Maya could grasp or release. They spoke in practical terms. When funds would be transferred, how receipts would be sent to her, what steps she should take if Marcus tried early eviction maneuvers. The conversation was full of names and times and documents, sensible, administratively specific phrases that made the world legible. Maya's suspicion had finally slid into a working caution that let her plan. That was a clear emotional shift from alarm to pragmatic trust. On the last day of the immediate window, Marcus returned with a packet of signed confirmations. He handed a copy to Maya, who read it, and then nodded. There was no handshake, only a folded formal acknowledgement. We are done here, he said. I have my notice. You have your receipts. Don't make me come back. The sentence was practical and blunt. It closed the public front of the conflict. Liam stayed long enough to make sure receipts had been issued and intake entries completed. He stood outside the shelter doorway before leaving and looked at Maya as if holding his attention inside a small frame. If you ever want to ask me why I did it, ask me directly, in person, he said. Not because you owe me anything, but because I will answer honestly. He left the line open without pressing her to accept any social debt. Maya watched him go. She had the ring back in a small envelope in her pocket. She had the shelter keycard in the tote. She had Sophia's lunch schedule in her hand. The emotions that had driven the night had resolved into concrete changes. Temporary housing booked, funds routed through the shelter account, receipts issued to her, school intake arranged, Marcus extension. She felt exhaustion and a slow, guarded relief that came from tasks completed. That evening she sat at the kitchen table with Sophia asleep on the couch and wrote a short, practical note to Elena thanking her for the intake help and asking for a meeting about longer-term housing options. She slid the note into the folder Elena had given her and closed the kitchen light. Before she put the silver locket back into its place, she took the plain silver ring out of its envelope and looked at it one last time. It did not mean ceremony. It meant a choice made between two people. It meant documented help and limits she had insisted on. She put the ring back in the envelope and handed it to Liam when he returned the next day to check paperwork. Keep it, she said simply, as a receipt. Not as a promise. He accepted it with a small nod. Understood, he said. In the weeks that followed, Maya kept to the appointments. She read every receipt Elena forwarded and kept Marcus' file on a shelf. Elena helped her apply for a rental assistance program. The shelter connected her with a local caseworker who sat with her through forms. Sophia joined the morning program and came home with new crowns and a clean uniform. The practical measures accumulated into a slow, tangible shift. Fewer nights of empty cabinets, a schedule that let Maya look for more steady hours without fear of immediate lockout. One afternoon a month later, Marcus stopped by with a different tone. He handed her a single-page document showing payments applied and a final note that he would not renew the lease beyond the current term. I will give you 3 months to find new housing, he said. No sudden lockouts. I don't want any trouble. His words were minimal. The effect felt like more time to plan. Maya filed the document in a folder marked housing and made a new list of viewings. Maya did not romanticize Liam's gesture. She measured it by results. Funds handled through the shelter, no hidden clauses, receipts that bore her name. She saw Elena regularly and learned to speak the administrative language that had once felt like a wall. Her caution remained. Her decision-making remained centered on Sophia's needs and her own authority as a parent. When she tucked Sophia into bed the night the landlord's extension became a formal notice, Sophia put her small hand over Maya's and asked, "Mammy, are we okay?" Maya squeezed the child's hand and said, "We are making a plan, my amor. We are safe tonight." The words were concrete. A plan, a check, a confirmation. Sophia's breathing eased. That simple exchange closed the immediate emotional arc of the chapter. Crisis averted through documented help, guarded trust built from conditions, parental authority preserved. A month after the ring was left in Liam's palm, Maya walked past the municipal garage and paused at the place where she had first found the envelope under the wiper. She looked down at the concrete where a faint oil stain held the memory of that night. She did not feel the need to keep any token there. Instead, she walked on, locket warm against her skin, a small list of appointments in her phone, receipts neatly scanned into a folder. The choice she had made, accept help on her terms, stayed in actions and documents, not in declarations. That was the way she would carry the night's deal forward. Through proof, through named steps, through the steady work of keeping her child safe. In the final exchange with Liam, when paperwork had been verified and the Shelter-S files closed for that phase, Maya slid the plain silver ring back to him calmly. "Keep it as a placeholder if you like," she said, "but remember what we agreed. Receipts in my name, decisions remain mine." He nodded, folded it into his wallet, and closed it with a small click. The last paragraph of the night that closed this chapter was not a speech or a promise. It was a concrete act. The ring changed hands again, the receipts were logged, and the shelter door closed with a routine click behind her as she carried Sophia home.